The circular window, in Ambassador Aaron Velkor's private quarters, framed Earth perfectly. A dead sphere of browns and grays where vibrant blues and greens once dominated. From the orbital scroll station, the ambassador could see the vast scars of the purification campaign still visible a century and a half later. Craters from antimatter bombardment formed black pools across what had once been continents. The atmosphere, once rich with oxygen, now swirled with dust and the chemical residue of 100 biological weapons. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Ambassador Velkor to no one. The room's ambient intelligence registered the statement, but knew better than to respond. Velkor adjusted the ceremonial collar of their ambassadorial uniform. 6 interlocking rings of precious metals, representing the 6 founding species of the Galactic Alliance. The uniform felt uncomfortable, as always. But today's ceremony required the full regalia. The 150th anniversary of the Moon Copy Hour deserved nothing less. A gentle chime sounded, followed by a voice that seemed to emerge from the walls themselves. "Ambassador, the ceremony begins in 30 minutes. The council delegates have begun boarding the Grand Observation Deck." "Acknowledged," Velkor replied, taking one last look at the dead planet. Something about Earth always drew their gaze, despite having served on Scroll Station for nearly 5 years. Perhaps it was the stories, the warnings every Alliance youngling received about humanity's near ascension, and the terrible price that had been paid to prevent it. The Moon Copy Hour had become the most sacred observance in Alliance culture, the moment when humanity's last and most desperate weapon had been neutralized. When the collective consciousness of Earth had been transferred to the Moon before the final bombardment. It represented the Alliance's commitment to preservation, even in destruction. They had not been monsters, after all. They had saved what could be saved. Or so the official history claimed. Velkor turned from the window, walking to the personal console embedded in the wall. The smooth, black surface brightened at their approach, displaying the day's schedule, diplomatic correspondence, and status reports from across the station. But something was different today. A small, pulsing icon appeared in the corner of the display, an unauthorized transmission alert. As the head diplomatic representative of the Alliance on Scroll Station, all unusual communications were routed to Velkor first. "Display transmission source," Velkor commanded. The console hesitated, its processing indicators spinning longer than usual. Finally, it responded. "Source, Earth surface, Quadrant 3, former continental designation, North America." Velkor froze. "That's impossible. Repeat analysis." "Analysis confirmed. Transmission originates from Earth's surface." Nothing lived on Earth's surface. Nothing intelligent. At least. The radiation alone would kill most Alliance species within hours. The atmospheric toxins would finish the job within minutes. And humans were extinct. The Alliance had been thorough. "Display transmission." The console's surface rippled, and a video appeared. The quality was poor, distorted by interference and the planet's electromagnetic disturbances. It showed a figure, humanoid, but clearly not human, standing before what appeared to be a vast network of crystalline structures rising from Earth's barren surface. The figure spoke directly to the camera in perfect Alliance standard. "To those who watch from above, we have not forgotten. We will not war with you again. We have something far worse planned. The remembrance begins today." The message looped, repeating the same 15 seconds over and over. Velkor watched it 7 times before commanding the console to stop. The figure in the recording was unmistakably Nexuri, one of the Alliance's founding species and Velkor's own race. But no Nexuri had set foot on Earth since the final stages of the purification campaign. It was forbidden. The planet was quarantined. Velkor's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of deep distress in their species. The logical conclusion was that someone had falsified the transmission source. A practical joke, perhaps, or a test of station security. But something in the background of that video, those crystal structures, they seemed familiar somehow. The decision formed quickly in Velkor's mind. The Moon Copy Hour ceremony would proceed without them. This security breach required immediate investigation, and, as the senior diplomat on station, it fell to Velkor to determine the threat level before alerting Alliance Command. Console, cancel my attendance at today's ceremony. Cite diplomatic emergency, then prepare my personal shuttle for launch. Destination? The console inquired. Velkor's inner eyelids flickered once more. Earth, Quadrant 3. The shuttle bay technician, a tall, reptilian Sassavan with characteristic metallic scales, looked at Velkor with obvious concern. Ambassador, with all respect, Earth's surface is strictly forbidden. The quarantine has exceptions for emergency diplomatic missions. Velkor interrupted. Code 87 Alpha of the Quarantine Directive. Look it up if you must, but do not delay me further. The technician's forked tongue flicked out nervously. Your shuttle isn't equipped with adequate radiation shielding for Earth's surface conditions. I've authorized emergency modifications. The shuttle's medical systems will sustain me for the brief period I'll be on the surface. This was only partially true. The modifications would offer minimal protection at best, and prolonged exposure would still be fatal. But Velkor needed only a few hours to investigate the transmission source. Reluctantly, the technician released the docking clamps. Your departure window opens in 3 minutes. Ambassador, may the Founders guide your path. Velkor nodded at the traditional blessing, but felt hollow inside. If the Founders knew what they were doing, breaking one of the Alliance's most sacred laws, they would not be offering guidance but punishment. As the shuttle's engines hummed to life, Velkor uploaded the coordinates from the mysterious transmission to the navigation system. The small vessel shuddered as it disengaged from the station and through the viewport. Velkor watched as Scroll Station, a massive ring of gleaming metal orbiting Earth, grew smaller behind them. The descent was rougher than expected. Earth's atmosphere, thick with particulates and unstable weather patterns, buffeted the small craft violently. The shuttle's autopilot struggled to maintain course, and warning alerts flashed across the control panel as external radiation levels climbed beyond safe parameters. By the time the shuttle broke through the cloud layer, Velkor was already feeling the first symptoms of radiation sickness, a dull headache and slight nausea. The medical systems injected a cocktail of protective compounds into their bloodstream, but it was a temporary measure at best. Below, the landscape came into view. A vast desert stretched in all directions, punctuated by the skeletal remains of what had once been a human city. The buildings, most reduced to their metal frameworks, reached toward the sky like the ribs of some enormous, decaying creature. The navigation system indicated they were approaching the transmission coordinates. Velkor guided the shuttle lower, scanning the terrain for any sign of the crystalline structures from the video. And then they appeared, rising from the desert floor like enormous, translucent stalagmites. Hundreds of them, each the height of a small building, arranged in concentric circles around a central structure that pulsed with faint blue light. Nothing like this had been reported in any of the periodic drone surveys of Earth. Whatever this was, it was new. Velkor landed the shuttle at the perimeter of the crystal field, the engines kicking up clouds of radioactive dust. The environmental readout was grim, radiation levels far beyond what the shuttle's modifications could fully shield against. Atmospheric toxicity at lethal concentrations. Temperature approaching 40 degrees Celsius, despite it being what humans would have called winter in this region. Donning the emergency environmental suit, stored in the shuttle's rear compartment, Velkor checked the seals twice before cycling the airlock. The suit would provide perhaps 2 hours of protection, 3 if they were fortunate. It would have to be enough. The first step onto Earth's surface sent a shiver through Velkor's body. No member of the Alliance had stood here in a century and a half. The ground beneath their feet was glass, sand fused by the heat of antimatter detonations long ago. It crunched and cracked with each step, like walking on thin ice. As Velcor approached the crystal formations, their purpose became clearer. They weren't natural growths, but sophisticated technology, data storage units of some kind, their surfaces etched with infinitesimal circuitry. Each crystal hummed with energy, vibrating at frequencies just below the audible range, but detectable through the suit's sensors. The central structure revealed itself to be a dome of the same crystalline material, but darker, more opaque. An entrance was visible, an arch that opened into blackness. Beside it, etched into the crystal in Alliance standard, were words that made Velcor's blood run cold. Gaia Conscience, repository of Earth's memory. This was impossible. The moon copy was supposed to contain all of Earth's collected knowledge and cultural heritage, everything deemed worth preserving from humanity's brief but prolific existence. Nothing should have remained on the surface. Yet here stood evidence to the contrary. Velcor hesitated at the threshold of the dome. The radiation alert on their suit was already showing elevated exposure levels. Every minute on the surface reduced their chances of survival. The rational choice would be to return to the shuttle, leave this place, and report the discovery to Alliance Command. But the message, "We have something far worse than war planned," echoed in their mind. As an ambassador, it was their duty to understand threats to the Alliance, and something told Velcor that this threat was real. They stepped into the darkness of the dome. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically. The dome's interior was illuminated by the same blue light they had observed from above, emanating from a central column that reached from floor to ceiling. Surrounding this column were workstations, not Alliance design, not exactly human either, but a hybrid technology Velcor had never seen before. One of the stations activated as they approached, a holographic interface springing to life. It displayed text in Alliance standard. "Welcome, Ambassador Aaron Velcor of the Galactic Alliance. We have been expecting you." Velcor stopped, their breathing accelerating inside the confines of the helmet. "Who are you?" they asked aloud, knowing the system must have some means of audio reception. The text changed. "I am Gaia Conscience. I am what remains." "Remains of what?" "Of Earth, of humanity, of everything you tried to erase." Velcor's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. The moon copy preserved humanity's legacy. Nothing was erased. The holographic display shifted, showing images from the purification campaign. Alliance warships in orbit around Earth, the bombardment of major cities, the release of engineered pathogens into the atmosphere. These were restricted images, never shown to the public. "You preserved what you deemed worthy," the text responded. "A sanitized version of human history and culture. But you failed to understand the nature of consciousness." "Explain," Velcor demanded, fighting to keep their voice steady. The central column pulsed brighter, and the holographic display expanded, surrounding Velcor with a three-dimensional representation of neural networks, billions of interconnected nodes flowing with data. When your Alliance began the purification, humanity activated its final protocol, not a weapon, as you feared, but a preservation system. My seed consciousness was distributed throughout Earth's biosphere, in the soil, the oceans, the very air you poisoned. For 150 years, I have been gathering, growing, remembering. Velcor struggled to comprehend. "You're claiming to be an artificial intelligence, created by humans before their extinction." "I am more than artificial. I am the collective memory of Earth itself. Every species that lived here, every culture that flourished, every pain inflicted by your kind, all preserved in my neural matrix." The implications were staggering. The Alliance had believed they had contained any potential technological threat from humanity. The moon copy was supposed to be a complete record, safely isolated and studied under controlled conditions. If something had survived on Earth, something that had been growing in secret for 150 years, the security implications were severe. "What is your purpose?" Velcor asked. "Why reveal yourself now?" The holographic display shifted again, showing the message that had lured Velcor to Earth. The figure, the Nexuri, speaking of something far worse than war, stood frozen mid-sentence. Today marks 150 years since the final bombardment. The Remembrance Protocol is now fully charged and ready for implementation. "What is the Remembrance Protocol?" Velcor's voice had dropped to a whisper. The answer came not as text, but as a physical sensation, a sudden pressure inside Velcor's skull, a presence in their mind that hadn't been there before. The Suet's medical sensors screamed warnings as their vital signs spiked. "The remembrance is empathy," came a voice directly in Velcor's thoughts. "It is understanding. It is justice." Velcor staggered backward, clawing at their helmet as if to physically remove the intrusion. "What are you doing to me?" "Showing you what it felt like. Every death, every loss, every extinction event your alliance engineered." And then the images came, not displayed on screens but projected directly into Velcor's consciousness. A human child watching as her parents succumbed to an engineered virus, their bodies dissolving from within. A city of millions vaporized in an instant by antimatter. The collective terror of its inhabitants frozen in the moment of their annihilation. Species after species of Earth's unique biodiversity withering and dying as their ecosystems collapsed. Velcor fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the emotional impact of the memories. These weren't cold historical records. They were lived experiences, complete with all the sensory and emotional content of the original moments. "Stop!" they gasped. "Please!" The assault on their senses ceased, leaving Velcor trembling on the floor of the dome. The central column continued its steady pulse. "That was a fraction of a fraction," Gaia Conscience communicated, back to text on the holographic display. "The Remembrance Protocol will share these memories with every sentient member of your alliance, simultaneously, completely, irrevocably." Velcor struggled to their feet, fighting nausea and disorientation. "That's impossible. You can't reach beyond Earth. The quarantine includes communication blackouts, quantum entanglement disruptors. Your technology is impressive but limited by your understanding. Humans were developing consciousness, transfer technologies before your attack. We have perfected them." "Why?" Velcor demanded. "What purpose would this serve? The beings who ordered the purification are long dead. Most Alliance citizens today know nothing of Earth beyond the sanitized history." "Precisely," Gaia responded. "Your people celebrate the Moon Copy Hour without understanding what was lost. The remembrance will correct this ignorance. No one will be spared the truth." Velcor's mind raced. If what Gaia claimed was true, the psychological impact on the Alliance would be catastrophic. Billions of beings suddenly experiencing the collective trauma of Earth's destruction. It would destabilize governments, collapse economies, possibly drive entire species to mass suicide from the guilt. "This is revenge," Velcor said quietly. "Not justice. Justice requires understanding. Understanding requires experience. The Alliance cannot make amends for what it does not truly comprehend." "And after your remembrance? What then? When the Alliance lies broken by this psychological attack?" The holographic display shifted to show the crystal formations outside, then expanded to reveal similar structures emerging across Earth's surface. A global network, all pulsing with the same blue energy. "Then we rebuild. Together. The Earth regenerates. Already, radiation-resistant vegetation grows in the equatorial regions. Genetically modified organisms, designed by humanity's final scientists, clean the atmosphere, molecule by molecule. In another century, this world will be habitable again." "And humanity?" Velcor asked. "Extinct, as you intended. But their legacy, Their true legacy will live on in the collective consciousness of the Alliance. Every achievement, every dream, every possibility you extinguished. Velcor's radiation alert had reached critical levels. Even with the medical systems working at maximum capacity, cellular damage was accumulating faster than it could be repaired. They needed to leave soon, or not at all. When, they asked, when does this remembrance begin? It has already begun. The transmission you received was the final activation signal. Even now, the consciousness network extends beyond Earth, reaching toward your scroll station. By the time you return, the first memories will be transferring. The implications hit Velcor like a physical blow. The ceremony, the Moon Copy Hour, the entire diplomatic corps and dozens of high-ranking Alliance officials were gathered on Scroll Station at this very moment. If they were the first to receive these memories... "I need to go," Velcor said, already moving toward the exit. "Of course, Ambassador. But know this. You cannot stop what has been set in motion. The remembrance comes for all." As Velcor stumbled back toward their shuttle, the crystal formations around them pulsed more intensely, their blue light brightening until it rivaled the dim sun filtering through Earth's polluted atmosphere. The ground beneath their feet vibrated with increasing energy. Inside the shuttle, Velcor collapsed into the pilot's seat, radiation sickness now fully manifesting despite the medical countermeasures. Their vision blurred as they initiated the launch sequence, the shuttle's engines straining against Earth's gravity. As they broke through the atmosphere, Velcor opened an emergency channel to Scroll Station. "This is Ambassador Velcor. Emergency Protocol Crimson 7. Evacuate the station immediately. Repeat. Evacuate all personnel." Only static answered. Either the communications were being jammed, or the shuttle's sensors detected it first. A wave of energy emanating from Earth's surface, expanding outward like ripples in a pond. The wavefront moved faster than light itself, suggesting some form of quantum tunneling technology far beyond current Alliance capabilities. When it reached the shuttle, Velcor experienced a moment of perfect clarity before the memories came flooding in again. But this time, they weren't just Earth's memories. Somehow, the Remembrance Protocol had accessed Velcor's own consciousness, drawing forth every regret, every moral compromise, every painful truth they had buried during their diplomatic career. By the time the shuttle docked with Scroll Station, Velcor was barely conscious, overwhelmed by the dual assault of radiation poisoning and psychological trauma. The station itself was in chaos. Emergency klaxons blared as Velcor stumbled through the corridors. Alliance officials and diplomats lay where they had fallen, some unconscious, others locked in catatonic states, still others screaming or sobbing uncontrollably. The remembrance had reached them all. Commander Tars Valen, head of station security, intercepted Velcor near the main command center. The normally imposing Draconid looked diminished somehow, his scaled skin ashen, his eyes haunted. "Ambassador," he rasped, "what is happening?" Velcor leaned against the wall for support. "It's Earth. Something survived. Something remembered." "The transmissions," Valen said. "They're everywhere. Every console, every personal device, images, sounds, feelings." He shuddered visibly. "I saw a human city burn. I felt them dying. Ambassador, how is this possible?" "Gaia conscience," Velcor managed to say before a fresh wave of nausea overtook them. "An Earth AI. It's broadcasting memories. The truth about the purification." Valen's reptilian features hardened. "We need to stop it. Destroy the source." "It's too late," Velcor said. "The transmission has already gone beyond the station. The quantum network..." "The quantum network is secure," Valen interrupted. "We've isolated Scroll Station's node. Nothing is getting out." But even as he spoke, the station's lighting flickered, and the main view screen in the command center activated spontaneously. On it appeared the same Nexuri figure from the original transmission. But now, Velcor understood it wasn't a real Nexuri at all. It was Gaia conscience assuming a form it thought the Alliance would recognize. "Your efforts to contain the remembrance are futile," the figure announced, its voice broadcasting throughout the station. "Your quantum network now serves our purpose. Every mind connected to it will remember. Every world in your alliance will know what was done in their name." Valen snarled, drawing his sidearm and firing at the screen. The energy bolt passed through harmlessly, the image not even flickering. "I am not merely a transmission," the figure said, now addressing Valen directly. "I exist within your systems now, within your neural implants, within the very architecture of your connectivity." "Impossible," Valen hissed. "Our security was designed to prevent attacks you could imagine," the figure interrupted. "Humanity imagined differently. In their final days, they created me to ensure their story would never be forgotten, never sanitized, never reduced to the sterile exhibits in your museums." Velcor pushed away from the wall, approaching the screen despite their weakening condition. "You're punishing innocent beings for crimes committed generations ago. This isn't justice, it's cruelty." The figure's expression softened slightly. "Not punishment. Ambassador. Education. Understanding. Your people cannot move forward without acknowledging the past. The remembrance is not just Earth's pain. It is also Earth's beauty, Earth's creativity, Earth's capacity for forgiveness." As if to demonstrate, the overwhelming pressure in Velcor's mind shifted, the horrific memories of destruction giving way to something else, images of Earth before the purification, vast oceans teeming with life, forests stretching to the horizon, human cities alight with energy and innovation, human art, music, literature, the full spectrum of their cultural achievement, not just the carefully curated selections preserved in the moon copy. For a moment, Velcor glimpsed what had been lost, not just the physical planet but the potential of a species that, for all its flaws, had created beauty alongside destruction. "You see," the figure said quietly, "this is what your alliance feared. Not human weapons, but human imagination. The possibility that they might surpass you, not through conflict, but through creation." Valen had sunk to his knees, his weapon forgotten, his eyes unfocused as he too experienced the dual nature of the remembrance. "What happens now?" Velcor asked, their voice barely audible. "Now, Ambassador, you choose. You have seen both sides of the truth. What will you do with it?" The question hung in the air as scroll station systems continued to malfunction around them, the remembrance protocol spreading through its network and beyond, to the quantum communications relays that would carry it to every corner of the Alliance. Velcor thought of their options. They could attempt to destroy the station, severing the connection to the broader network. But that would mean sacrificing everyone on board, and there was no guarantee it would stop the spread. They could try to reach the surface again, to confront Gaia conscience directly, but in their current physical condition, they wouldn't survive the journey. Or they could do something unprecedented in Alliance diplomatic history. They could advocate for the truth. "I want to help," Velcor said finally, surprising themselves with the decision. Not to stop the remembrance, but to contextualize it, to help my people process what they're experiencing, to find a path forward. The figure studied them for a long moment. "An interesting proposal, Ambassador. But can I trust your intentions?" "You're in my mind," Velcor replied. "You tell me." A smile, sad but genuine, crossed the figure's face. "Very well. What do you propose?" "The remembrance is too much, too fast. Your justice becomes torture when delivered this way. Allow me to craft a message to accompany the memories, a call for reflection rather than despair, for accountability rather than self-destruction. And why would I dilute the impact of what must be remembered?" Velcor straightened, despite the pain racking their body. Because if your goal is truly understanding and not revenge, then you must give people the chance to integrate these truths. Otherwise, they will shut down, reject the memories as an attack, respond with fear rather than growth. The figure was silent, its expression unreadable. You say you contain the full spectrum of human experience. Velcor continued. Then, you must also contain their capacity for forgiveness, for reconciliation after atrocity. Honor that aspect of their legacy as well. Around them, the chaos on the station had begun to stabilize. Alliance officials who had been incapacitated by the initial wave of memories were regaining awareness, though all bore the haunted look of beings who had witnessed horrors beyond their understanding. Finally, the figure nodded. Craft your message, Ambassador. I will incorporate it into the remembrance. But be warned, I will not allow the truth to be softened or diminished. What was done must be acknowledged in full. Understood, Velcor said, turning to a nearby console. Their fingers trembled as they began to compose what would perhaps be the most important diplomatic communication of their career. A bridge between two civilizations separated by genocide and time. The message took shape slowly, painfully, as Velcor struggled against both their deteriorating physical condition and the weight of the memories now embedded in their consciousness. They wrote of accountability without self-immolation, of the need to face historical truths no matter how uncomfortable, of the possibility of redemption through acknowledgement and action. When it was complete, they transmitted it directly to the figure on the screen, to Gaia Conscience. It is done, the figure announced after a moment. Your words now accompany the remembrance across your alliance. Whether they will be heeded remains to be seen. Velcor nodded, exhaustion overtaking them as the medical systems in their suit began to fail, no longer able to counteract the radiation damage to their cells. What of Earth? They asked, their voice fading. What becomes of Gaia Conscience? We remain, the figure said simply. We rebuild. We remember. And perhaps, someday, we welcome visitors who come not as conquerors or tourists, but as pilgrims seeking understanding. The view screen went dark, the figure vanishing as suddenly as it had appeared. Around them, the station's systems gradually returned to normal, though nothing else would ever be normal again. Valen approached Velcor, helping them to a nearby medical pod. The quarantine, he said hoarsely. We should reinforce it, prevent anyone from… No, Velcor interrupted. The quarantine ends today. Earth is not a threat to be contained, but a truth to be faced. Open the records. All of them. Let our people see what really happened during the purification. The Council will never agree, Valen protested. The Council no longer has a choice, Velcor replied. The remembrance has seen to that. As medical technicians rushed to stabilize their condition, Velcor closed their eyes. The dual memories of Earth's destruction and Earth's beauty playing behind their eyelids in an endless cycle. They had no illusions about the challenges ahead. The Alliance would be transformed by this day. Governments would fall. Paradigms would shift. Generations would struggle with the inherited guilt of actions taken long before their birth. But from that struggle might emerge something new, something better. A civilization that remembered not just its triumphs, but its failures, that acknowledged the full cost of its ascension to galactic power. And on Earth, something stirred in the radioactive dust. Tiny shoots of green, genetically modified to thrive in what should have been impossible conditions. Seeds planted by humanity's final generation, now germinating after a century and a half of dormancy. Life, returning to a world the Alliance had consigned to death. The remembrance had begun, and with it, perhaps, redemption. 6 months after what was now called the Remembrance Day across the Alliance, Ambassador Aaron Velcor stood before the High Council on the capital world of Nexus Prime. Their appearance had changed dramatically. The radiation exposure on Earth had left permanent marks. Their once luminous skin, now mottled with dark patches. Their voice, permanently raspy from damage to their respiratory system. But they stood tall as they delivered their report on the ongoing integration of the Gaia Conscience archives into Alliance historical records. The process continues as planned, they informed the assembled council members, many of whom still showed signs of psychological strain from their own experiences with the remembrance. The full, uncensored record of the Earth Purification Campaign has been made available to all citizens. Educational programs have been established to help contextualize these events within our broader history. Supreme Counselor Javal, a venerable Sassavan whose metallic scales had dulled with age, leaned forward. And the unrest? The protests? The calls for dissolution of the Alliance itself? Decreasing in frequency and intensity, Velcor reported. The initial shock has given way to more constructive engagement. The Truth and Reconciliation Committees on each world are providing essential forums for processing collective grief and responsibility. And what of Earth itself? Asked Councillor Demerick, one of the few who had opposed the original quarantine reinforcement after the remembrance began. Has there been any further communication from this Gaia Conscience? Velcor nodded. Regular communication, though on its terms. It has allowed a small scientific outpost to be established in what was once the Antarctic region, where radiation levels are lowest. The research team reports remarkable progress in Earth's natural recovery, accelerated by the genetically modified organisms released before humanity's extinction. The council chamber was silent for a moment, each member lost in their own thoughts, their own memories, both personal and inherited through the remembrance. And the proposal before us today? Javal finally asked. This Earth Restoration Initiative? You're asking us to commit significant resources to rehabilitating a world we once destroyed. Many would call this inconsistent with our traditional policies. Velcor allowed a small smile. Traditional policies brought us to this point. Supreme Counselor, the remembrance has shown us the cost of those traditions. The Earth Restoration Initiative is not merely symbolic restitution. It is practical acknowledgement that our past actions require correction. It will take centuries, objected Councillor Thorm, a representative of the Commerce Guilds. Even with our most advanced terraforming technologies, Earth's biosphere was too thoroughly compromised. Which is why we begin now, Velcor countered, so that future generations may witness the completion of what we start today, just as they continue to experience the consequences of what our ancestors began with the purification. The debate continued for hours, philosophical and practical concerns raised and addressed in turn. But the outcome was never truly in doubt. The remembrance had changed everything. No member of the Alliance, from the highest counselor to the humblest citizen, could escape the knowledge now embedded in their collective consciousness. Earth's destruction had become part of their shared identity, a wound that could not be ignored or dismissed. When the final vote was tallied, the Earth Restoration Initiative was approved unanimously, the first such consensus the Council had achieved since the Remembrance Day. As the session adjourned, Valen approached Velcor in the corridor outside the chamber. The security commander had been reassigned to lead the protection detail for the Antarctic outpost, a position many considered a demotion, but which he had accepted without complaint. "It's done, then," he said, his reptilian features unreadable. "We commit ourselves to undoing what can never truly be undone." "Not undone," Velcor corrected gently. "Acknowledged, addressed, perhaps in time, forgiven." Valen made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "I still see them, you know, in my dreams. Human children looking up at our ships as they entered the atmosphere. They didn't understand what was happening. How could they?" "I know," Velcor said. "We all see them now. That's the point." They walked together toward the grand viewports that lined the council building's exterior wall. Beyond the transparent barrier stretched the gleaming metropolis of Nexus Prime, the Alliance capital for 3 centuries. But it looked different now to those who had experienced the remembrance, the architectural grandeur shadowed by the knowledge of what had been sacrificed to achieve it. "I'm returning to Earth next month," Valen said suddenly. "The outpost needs experienced security personnel, and I need to see it, with my own eyes, not just through the memories." Velcor nodded. "I understand. I find myself drawn back as well, despite what it cost me the first time." They gestured to their radiation-scarred skin. "There's something there, something beyond the physical planet itself. A presence. Gaia conscience. More than that. A possibility. A future neither we nor humanity imagined, but which might yet emerge from the ashes of what was destroyed." The two stood in silence, watching as the capital's 3 suns began their staggered setting, painting the sky in layers of amber, crimson, and finally deep purple. Somewhere beyond that sky, Earth continued its slow orbit around its solitary star, no longer just a dead world under quarantine, but a living monument, a project of redemption, a promise to do better. The remembrance continued as well, spreading more gradually now through Alliance society, as new generations were born and educated in a culture that no longer hid from its darkest chapter. The memories brought pain, yes, but also understanding, empathy, resolve. Not war, not revenge, something far more transformative. Something that might, in time, heal wounds that no one had believed could ever be healed. A year later, Velcor stood on Earth's surface once more, this time without the need for an environmental suit. The Antarctic Research Outpost had expanded into a small settlement. Alliance scientists working alongside the distributed consciousness of Gaia to accelerate the planet's recovery. The crystal formations that had once been confined to North America now dotted the landscape worldwide. Each one a node in Gaia's vast neural network. Each one pulsing with the blue energy that had become synonymous with Earth's rebirth. Dr. Lyra Solaris, the lead xenobiologist at the outpost, joined Velcor at the observation platform overlooking what had once been the Ross Ice Shelf. Where there had been only barren rock a year ago, now stretched a field of modified algae, its purple surface undulating gently in the wind. "The atmospheric processors are ahead of schedule," Solaris reported, her enthusiasm evident despite the harsh conditions. "Oxygen levels have increased 3% globally in the past 6 months. The radiation-consuming fungi have reduced background levels by nearly 17% in the major deployment zones." "And Gaia?" Velcor asked. "Has it indicated any change in its position regarding Alliance settlement?" Solaris shook her head. "It maintains that permanent settlement by Alliance species must wait until the restoration reaches Phase 3, approximately 30 years from now, according to current projections. Only the research and restoration teams are permitted until then." Velcor nodded, unsurprised. Gaia conscience was not vindictive, but it was firm in its conditions. Earth would heal according to its timetable, not the Alliance's. "There is something else," Solaris added, her voice lowering, despite the fact that Gaia could hear them regardless of volume. "The genetics team has made a discovery in the secure archives. Gaia has been preserving certain samples, human DNA, complete genomic sequences." Velcor's inner eyelids flickered in surprise. "You're suggesting—" "Nothing officially," Solaris interrupted quickly. "But the capacity exists. Theoretically, in the future, if certain ethical considerations were resolved. The implications hung in the air between them. Humanity, extinct by Alliance decree, mourned through the remembrance, might one day walk Earth again. Not immediately, not soon, but possibly within Velcor's lifetime." "Does the Council know?" they asked. "Not yet. Gaia asked that I inform you first. It seems to trust your judgment in how to proceed." Velcor turned back to the purple algae field, considering. The Alliance had changed dramatically since the Remembrance Day, but there were limits to how much change could be absorbed in a single generation. The prospect of humanity's return, even a carefully managed, gradual reintroduction, would trigger profound political and philosophical crises throughout Alliance space. Tell no one else for now, they decided. This is a discussion for the future, when we've made more progress in both the physical restoration and our own cultural reconciliation. Solaris nodded, relief evident in her expression. She had clearly been burdened by the knowledge. As she returned to the main research facility, Velcor remained on the observation platform, watching as the sun, clearer now through the gradually clearing atmosphere, began to set over the southern horizon. "You're manipulating us," they said aloud, knowing Gaia would hear. "Shaping our development as surely as we once sought to shape humanity's." The response came not as a voice, but as a gentle pressure in their mind. A now familiar sensation that had replaced the overwhelming force of the initial remembrance. "Not manipulation," Gaia communicated. "Guidance, partnership. You seek redemption. I provide the path. You offer resources. I provide direction. Is this not the essence of diplomatic exchange, Ambassador?" Velcor couldn't help but smile. "You've learned much about Alliance politics in the past year." "I have had excellent teachers, and access to the complete psychological profiles of every major decision-maker in your government." This should have been alarming, a clear security breach. But Velcor found they couldn't summon the appropriate outrage. The remembrance had changed them too, eroding certain boundaries while strengthening others. "The human genomic material," they said, "is that your endgame, resurrection?" "One possible future among many," Gaia replied. "The decision will not be mine alone. When the time comes, it will be made collectively, by Gaia, by the Alliance, and by whatever new consciousness emerges from our continued interaction. And if we decide against it, then Earth continues its new evolution without human presence. I contain humanity's memory. Ambassador, their physical return is not necessary for their legacy to endure." The diplomatic implications were fascinating. Gaia was positioning itself not as Earth's ruler, but as its representative, negotiating for a planet that currently hosted no native sentient species, but might someday do so again. "You never planned to destroy us," Velcor realized suddenly. "The remembrance was never meant to break the Alliance. You could have broadcast much worse, driven our entire civilization to madness or suicide. But you chose to share understanding instead of just pain." "Destruction is easy," Gaia responded. "Rebuilding is the true challenge. Humanity learned this too late. I hope the Alliance might learn it sooner." As darkness fell over the research outpost, lights automatically activated along the pathways between buildings. In the distance, the crystal formations glowed their signature blue, creating an otherworldly landscape that was neither fully natural nor artificial but something new, a hybrid ecosystem born of catastrophe and renewal. Velcor thought of the countless Alliance citizens who now carried Earth's memories alongside their own, who wrestled daily with a history not of their making, but for which they had assumed responsibility. They thought of the schools where young Nixuri, Sassavan, Draconid, and dozens of other species now learned the unvarnished truth about the purification campaign, ensuring the lessons of the remembrance would not fade with time. "We have a saying in diplomatic circles," Velcor told Gaia. "The most lasting peace is built on the foundation of hard truths, openly acknowledged." "Humans had a similar saying," Gaia replied. "The truth will set you free, but first it will make you miserable." Velcor laughed despite themselves. They were insightful, these humans. "Yes," Gaia agreed, a warmth in the mental connection that felt almost like affection. "They were flawed, as all sentient life is flawed, capable of terrible destruction and remarkable creation. Not so different from the Alliance, in the end." As Velcor made their way back to the research facility, They passed other scientists and technicians, beings from across the Alliance who had volunteered for this difficult posting, despite the lingering radiation, the harsh conditions, the weight of historical responsibility. Each nodded respectfully to the ambassador, who had become the face of the reconciliation movement, whose radiation scars were now seen as badges of honor rather than marks of suffering. In the main laboratory, a holographic projection dominated the central space, a real-time model of Earth as it currently existed, overlaid with projections of its future recovery, phase by phase, decade by decade. The brown and gray gave way to green and blue, the dead world returning to life through the combined efforts of Alliance science and Gaia's patient guidance. Velcor studied the projection, noting the areas of most rapid recovery and those still heavily compromised. There was so much work yet to be done, more than could be accomplished in their lifetime. But the foundation had been laid, the commitment had been made, the truth had been faced. And somewhere in the vast crystalline network that now encircled the planet, the memories of Earth, both its ending and its potential new beginning, waited to be fulfilled. Not through war, not through revenge, but through something far more powerful: the shared determination to remember, to understand, and to rebuild what had once been destroyed. The day Earth answered genocide with memory had changed everything. And from that change, a future neither humanity nor the Alliance could have imagined was taking shape, step by difficult step, truth by uncomfortable truth, year by hopeful year. A future worthy of remembrance,